Hi again. This is one of an occasional series where I make some comments about current events. And recently in the House of Commons Parliament, there's been various debates on three subjects which I want to elaborate on because they've all got something in common. Firstly, was the Rwanda Plan to deport illegal immigrants to the African state of Rwanda. Secondly, was a proposal to put a ban on smoking with a rolling age limit. And the third is proposals to reduce knife crime. And what they've all got in common is that they're all totally impractical and doomed to fail. So let's start off with the Rwanda Plan, a cunning plan worthy of Baldrick, because the tremendous, what has been termed an invasion on our southern coast, which is usually young men coming across without any documentation to prove that they are in fact worthy of being granted asylum, and no way of checking any criminal status, entering the country 500 daily rate in certain cases, and this has been going on for years. And the Rwanda Plan is to take an aircraft, fly these people to Rwanda and settle them there with the cooperation of the Rwandan government. By the way, in exchange, we have to take a similar number of Rwandan refugees. So that's quite a strange kind of correlation to fathom, that how that reduces the number of immigrants in the country. That one baffles me completely. Now, there are numerous problems with the immigration situation, both legal immigration and illegal immigration. And one of the problems is, as I mentioned, they are largely undocumented. So sorting out the merits of a case is very, very difficult. And quite often at a tribunal, they are refused leave to remain in the UK and face deportation. But there is an appeals process. And recently the Daily Telegraph sent a reporter down to monitor the appeals. And one of the things he found out was in many, many cases, the Home Office don't send anyone to counter the argument. So the case automatically goes through, and they are granted leave to remain without any further necessity to justify it. Plus, as we've seen in the press recently, there are people who pretend to become Christian, have mental health issues, which is the ailment of the decade, and also various other reasons why they can't be denied a family life, and all sorts of reasons. So that really is the problem on the southern coast. There's a vast industry devoted to making money from illegal immigration. Companies that are acquiring hotels, there's NGOs, there are charities, there's a lot of people who have a stake in keeping this business going. that's not even mentioning the traffickers who are bringing them over. Now, in any debate on immigration, there's always a call by the left for more safe and legal routes. Now, this would mean setting up centres, processing centres in places like France, where the cases could be examined. Now, even if that worked and you had the documentation to examine, something like 90% or more of those cases would be denied. So that would leave them still in France and then wanting to come over illegally. So opening up more safe and legal routes wouldn't do anything to curb the vast bulk of the illegal crossings. So even people who really want to stop illegal immigration, people like Nigel Farage, for example, who was the first person really to alert the public to the small boats coming over. He went out on a hired fisheries vessel and filmed the daily traffic and the taxi service being provided by both the RNLI and the Border Force. And even he is one of the biggest opponents of the Rwanda Plan, because he sees all the problems with it, that it's frankly unworkable. It's certainly unworkable while we are in the ECHR. While we're in the European Convention, there is no chance of any real way of stopping the boats working. It's just not going to happen. And I've seen many people on both sides of the arguments explain the law, and it's a problem that's not going to go away while we're in the European Convention. So there are suggestions that we use the Australian model, push the boats back, that kind of thing. But the problem is, with the current government, there is no will. Rishi Sunak has absolutely no will whatsoever to stop the small boats coming across. It's obvious. He was on a TV program recently with members of the public, and he was tackled on this, and a chap was making some suggestions of what could be done, and Rishi Sunak just wouldn't engage at all. He sat there with a smirk on his face. He has no interest whatsoever in stopping the boats. That is patently obvious. Most of his predecessors also. Boris Johnson, no interest. Theresa May, no interest. And David Cameron, no interest. Even though he pledged to get immigration as a whole down into the tens of thousands. So we were promised that. It was a manifesto promise. And so nobody has voted for this mass immigration. Rather, the vote was for a manifesto pledge to stop it, which has been abandoned by all the Conservative Prime Ministers, probably with the exception of Liz Truss, who did make appropriate statements. However, as we all know, her premiership was terminated mainly by the machinations of the globalists, I would say. Okay, she really was by no means a winning ticket, but I noticed Rishi Sunak had a dig at her in Parliament recently, and of course the answer to that is that he couldn't beat her. He couldn't win a party election over her. So whatever your criticism of Liz Truss is, then Rishi Sunak is even worse. Some suggestions people have made would be to take all the immigrants coming across in the small boats in a day, commandeer one of the cross-channel ferries, put them all on that, send them back to France without permission from anyone on the French side, and it would be a fait accompli, just offload them there. Would that work? I think it would work once, and it would kind of change the relationship. Another suggestion would be to charter or even buy a fleet of boats registered in France and use them to pick up the illegals coming across. When they enter UK waters, use these boats and then just go into France with them. They are French registered, and I don't think there'd be a legal problem with that. But all that would require will, and there's no will. And the only thing I would say is to counter this is that the Labour Party would be even worse. So the future is pretty bleak for anybody who wants to limit this crazy immigration policy with the hotels and sites being taken over, small villages being swamped by an influx of young men with different culture. So that's the first one. The second is to do with smoking, and the idea, which was originally proposed in New Zealand, I believe, is to put a date of birth on your ability to purchase tobacco products, and then from then on, even as you get older, there's no kind of upper age limit. You wouldn't never be able to legally purchase tobacco, cigarettes, etc. Now, even though I am totally in favour of stopping people smoking, I see numerous problems with this, even though it's probably not the worst of the three proposals that are being discussed. So one of the problems is if you propose a total ban on tobacco, the argument is that people will smuggle it in just as they do with drugs, illegal drugs. Cocaine is banned, it's a class A, and yet it's everywhere. And as we've seen with marijuana, which back in the day was highly illegal and people used to get arrested for it and jailed for possession, for smoking it, now it's virtually legal. Every street in a major city you can smell marijuana. Please turn a blind eye to it. If you're stopped and searched and you've got it, it's a street caution at best. So if tobacco was totally banned, it would be brought in by illegal routes, and it would become just the same as the illegal drugs are at present. So if you accept that even in a total ban situation, people are going to get it, then in a situation where tobacco itself's not banned, but your ability to buy it depends on your age, then it's going to be accessible everywhere. And we can see the problems with that. Also, at the moment, we don't carry identity cards in the UK, so how are you going to prove your birth date to some shopkeeper? And it's not really fair to put all the onus on the shopkeepers. And the proposal is that the police will enforce this. Well, they're not enforcing crime at the moment. Shoplifting, burglary and things like that, the police are not bothering with. So I'm sure they're not going to come out to some corner shop where some chap in his 20s or 30s in the future is trying to buy cigarettes. It's pretty futile. It is a step. It's something at least showing some sort of will, but I think it's doomed to failure in the stated aim of stopping people smoking, because it goes down to the reason why people start smoking. Because once they start smoking, they get hooked. It's very, very addictive. I see it all the time. People going out, because you can only smoke outside, going outside every half hour for hours. The same people. They're totally addicted. Getting up in the middle of the night, in the middle of winter, and going outside when they're in a hotel to smoke. So that addiction starts usually at an early age. And the reasons for it, and it's particularly prevalent with young girls, is it's a symbol of being grown up. And during the time of puberty, it's a very strong desire to appear to be adults, to be grown up, and smoking is seen as a symbol of that. There's peer pressure, there's the lure of the illicit, because it's forbidden, it's an attraction, and so on. And stopping that, I think, is a very, very difficult problem. It's a multi-layered approach. It would have to have aspects from the family, from the school, from media, social media, from role models and all sorts. And even then, I don't think it would be successful. A couple of countries have totally banned smoking. Costa Rica is one of them. We'll have to see how successful that is. But the other thing, obviously, is the government makes so much money from tax on cigarettes. So they are reluctant to actually do anything to stop the problem. Then the third one is trying to reduce knife crime, which is an epidemic at the moment. We've got these Stop the Bleed programs of first aid and equipment being positioned strategically in city centres and so on, or in various venues, which obviously is a reflection of the amount of knife crime that there is. And the proposals all are to do with the visual aspect of a knife, what it looks like. And it harks back to the days of Rambo knives. Now, I did a comment previously on this, so I won't go into it too much on this one. But it's failed before, because you can't define a zombie knife, you can't define a Rambo knife, you can't define a commando knife in terms that don't exclude normal kitchen knives, normal utility knives, which people have a legitimate use to have. So every house has got knives in it which would be lethal. Gary Spires, who knew as much about knives as anyone, and he spent his early life as a slaughterman butcher working in meat processing in Australia, and very adept with a knife. And he used to say that the best knife to use for self-protection or defense or any kind of encounter situation is a butcher's knife, an ordinary butcher's knife, because it's designed to cut meat. And we're not going to ban them. The obvious solution is the penalties involved in carrying a knife, using a knife, and also the means of detecting it. So I've asked lots of people, an informal poll, what they think should be a sentence for carrying a knife illegally in public. And it's usually somewhere in the region of 4 years. That's what people think it should be. Okay. Then I ask, what should be the sentence for threatening people with a knife? Pulling a knife out, waving around, threatening people, threatening to harm them. And they usually say something like 6 years, maybe 5 years, 6 years. Okay, what's the penalty then for using the knife, for stabbing somebody? Not killing them, but stabbing them. And it's usually around about the 8+ years. The problem is those sentences are not being handed out. I watched one of the police reality shows recently where officers were talking about encounters they've been in. This is in the UK. And there was an officer who was stabbed several times by a guy with a knife, and the guy got 2 years. That's it, 2 years for stabbing a police officer. And that highlights the problem. Even if they were giving out the sentences that the informal poll I conducted suggests, 4, 6, 8 years, the system is that is immediately halved. So the guy who stabbed the policeman and got 2 years, that'll be a year. And it's a total joke. Also, means of detection. I've seen police conduct sweeps in the city centre, the British Transport Police at the station, putting people through a magnetometer. Great. The problem is it's a one-off. It's done, it's talked about, goes in the paper, and that's it. It's not done again. It would have to be done either on a frequent, random basis or permanently for it to be effective. So they're the three things that were talked about recently in Parliament. They're all laudable aims: stopping illegal immigration, yep. Stopping smoking, yep, certainly. Stopping knife crime, all for it. People shouldn't be carrying knives illegally, and certainly shouldn't be stabbing each other in clan wars on the streets of our cities. So even though I'm in favour of all them, the futility and the lack of common sense of the arguments put up by people who are supposed to be very smart is absolutely woeful. And it would be funny if it wasn't so tragic. As I said, it's worthy of baldrick, it's worthy of farce. Scriptwriters couldn't come up with anything funnier. So that's it. That's my rant over. And the next video we'll do will be back on our usual equipment or reading matter.